The young man concentrated intently on picking fleas off the animal. Even without the monkey, he would have attracted attention, for both his kimono and the short red cloak he wore over it were decidedly fancy. His front hair wasn't shaved, and his top knot was tied with an unusual purple band. His clothing suggested he was still a boy, but these days it wasn't as easy as it used to be to tell a person's age from his apparel. With the rise of the Hideyoshi, clothing in general had become more colorful. It was not unknown for men of 25 or so to continue to dress like boys of 15 or 16 and leave their forelocks uncut. His skin glowed with youth, his lips were a heavy red, and his eyes were bright. On the other hand, he was solidly built, and there was a certain adult severity about his thick eyebrows and an upward curve at the corners of his eyes. So that is a brief description of Sasaki Kojiro. He's on a merchant ship headed towards, I believe it's Osaka. And there are merchants on there doing gambling, all sorts of illegal stuff, and he more or less shies away from that. However, on this ship is one of the Yoshiokas, Toji. And a lot of the passengers are curious about Sasaki Kojiro, not only because of his description and how he looks, but he's young and he's got a monkey. So the Yoshioka disciple decides to engage him in conversation. So here we go. Hello there, young fella. Going to Osaka? Without actually raising his head, the young man lifted his eyes a bit and said, yes. Does your family live there? No. Then you must be from Awa. No, not there either. This was said with a certain finality. Toji lapsed into silence for a time before he made another try. That's quite a sword you have there, he said. Seemingly happy to have the weapon praised, the young man rearranged himself to face Toji and replied genially, yes, it's been in my family a long time. It's a battle sword, but I plan to get a good swordsmith in Osaka to remount it so I can draw it from my side. It's too long for that, isn't it? Oh, I don't know. It's only 3 feet. That's pretty long. Smiling, the youth replied confidently, anybody should be able to handle a sword that long. Oh, it could be used if it was 3 feet long or even 4 feet, said Toji, reproachfully, but only an expert could handle it with ease. I see a lot of fellows swaggering around with huge swords these days. They look impressive, but when the going gets rough, they turn and run. What style did you study? In matters pertaining to swordsmanship, Toji could not conceal a feeling of superiority over this mere boy. The young man flashed a questioning look at Toji's smug face and replied, the Tomita style. Tomita style is for use with a shorter sword, said Toji authoritatively. The fact that I learned the Tomita style doesn't mean I have to use a shorter sword. I don't like to be imitative. My teacher used a shorter sword, so I decided to use a long one. That got me thrown out of the school. You young people do seem to take pride in being rebellious. What happened then? I left Jokoiji village in Ichizen and went to Kanamaki Jisai. He also discarded the Tomita style, then developed the Chujo style. He sympathized with me, took me in as a disciple, and after I'd studied under him for 4 years, he said I was ready to go out on my own. These country teachers are all quick to pass out certificates. Oh, not Jisai. It wasn't like that. In fact, the only other person he had ever given his certificate to was Ito Yagyoro Ayotasai. After I made up my mind to be the second man to get the formal certificate, I worked at it very hard. Before I was through though, I was suddenly called home because my mother was dying. The banter goes back and forth. Toji believes that this Sasaki Kojiro is just another boy. He doesn't really believe that he has mastered any style or that he's a real samurai because of his youth and his appearance. And that again goes back to the Yoshioka's vanity, that they somehow are superior to anybody or anything, especially a Ronin. The vanity of Toji ends up getting him into a mess. Here we go. "And then you plan to try to make your way into the world through the martial arts?" said Toji. While the remark was innocent enough in itself, the look on Toji's face revealed condescension bordering on contempt. He had long since had his fill of conceited young swordsmen who went around bragging about their certificates and their books of secrets. It was his considered opinion that there could not possibly be all that many expert swordsmen just wandering around. Had not he himself been in the Yoshioka School for nearly 20 years, and was he not still only a disciple, although a highly privileged one? The young man shifted his position and looked intently at the gray water. "Kyoto?" he muttered, then turned again to Toji and said, "I'm told there's a man there named Yoshioka School, the eldest of the sons of Yoshioka Kempo. Is he still alive?" Toji was in the mood to do some teasing. "Yes," he replied simply. "The Yoshioka seems to be flourishing. Have you visited the place?" "No, but when I get to Kyoto, I'd like to have a match with this Sejuro and see how good he is." Toji coughed to suppress a laugh. He was fast growing to detest the young man's brash self-confidence. Of course, he had no way of knowing Toji's position in the school, but if he were to find out, he would no doubt regret what he had just said. With a twisted face and a contemptuous tone, Toji asked, "And I suppose you think you'd come away unscathed?" "Why not?" the youth snapped back. Now he was the one who wanted to laugh, and laugh he did. Yoshioka has a big house and a lot of prestige, so I imagine Kempo must have been a great swordsman, but they say neither of his sons amount to much. How can you be so sure before you've actually met them? Well, that's what the other samurai in the provinces say. I don't believe everything I hear. Almost everybody seems to think the house of the Yoshioka will come to an end with Sejuro and Densen Sharo. So Tojin is face to face with Musashi's counterpart in terms of ability and what would eventually become known as a prestigious warrior next to Musashi. So this is the nemesis. This is the guy that Musashi will end up facing in the end. So Tojin has no idea who this guy is, but the Yoshioka School, that Harvard of Japan, thinks that they are all that and more, which is a big mistake because there are very capable samurai out there. As they met Musashi dealt him a defining blow. Sasaki Kojiro is just one of those guys, and he does end up teaching Tojin a lesson in his vanity and his judgmental attitude towards this young man on a boat. This also highlights Sasaki Kojiro's attitude, which rubs people the wrong way throughout the story. His brashness, his blunt attitude towards his ability and thinking that he too is superior. He is a good warrior, but again, the Yoshiokas demonstrate the vanity of a prestigious school, not in ability, but in just the prestige of the name of the dad. So anyway, this chapter more or less highlights vanity. And that's why in one of the earlier chapters, I warned about judging people just based on their appearance, because Musashi does come around. He's not well dressed. He does look like a vagabond, a ronin, a homeless samurai. He looks that part, but people misjudge him because he looks as if he's got no skill and it's just a wandering man. Sasaki Kojiro gives off the opposite, right? He's got the fancy clothes. He's dressed like a well-oiled machine, which he is. But again, you never judge people based on what they look like. And the vanity of the Yoshioka School, the Harvard of Japan, is evident in Tojin's attitude. All right, peace, everybody. Till next time.